Welcome to Between the Reads, where we shine a spotlight on some of the most talented Black authors in the industry to discuss their works of fiction and the inspirations behind them. Each episode will dive into the rich and diverse world of literature, exploring everything from historical fiction to romance and speculative fiction to YA and beyond. Tune in as we celebrate the voices of Black authors and the power of storytelling. Are you ready, Boos and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Brittany N. Williams is a classically trained actress who studied musical theater at Howard University and Shakespearean performance at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London. Previously, she's been a principal vocalist at Hong Kong Disneyland, a theater professor at Coppin State University, and made appearances in Queen Sugar and Leverage Redemption. Her short stories have been published in The Gambit Weekly, Fireside Magazine, and the Star Wars anthology, From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back. Brittany, welcome to Between the Reads.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Very, very unique. One of the most unique I've read so far. So why don't you tell us what that self-same metal is all about?
Yes, so I'm going to give y'all the elevator pitch. That self-same metal follows 16-year-old Joan Sands. She has the magical ability to manipulate metal, and she only wants to use that power to build swords and choreograph fights for William Shakespeare's acting company. But when malevolent Fae invade London, Joan finds that she's one of the few people who can protect the city. So, boom.
For future authors coming on the show, take note.
I practice that so much. I have it down. Okay?
Perfect. So, the Orisha, Shakespeare, Fae, it is a very unique combination for this book. What inspired you to blend these very distinct worlds together?
Yeah, so the idea first came to me when I first learned about the Orisha, particularly about Ogun, who's the Orisha of iron, of technology, and of war. And that made me wonder, well, what would happen if someone who, Ogun had blessed with the ability to wield iron had to fight against the Fae, who are vulnerable to iron. And then I've been a Shakespeare nerd since I was in elementary school. So I was like, okay, well, I should blend A Midsummer Night's Dream into this somehow. Like when you think of fairies, you think of Titania and Oberon and Puck. And of course, then I was like, well, if I'm going to have A Midsummer Night's Dream in there, why don't I just set it in Shakespeare's actual time and have him be a character? And then I have to have a fight happen during a performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream. So then we got the book.
Listen, I was a little concerned when I read this book because I was like, Lord, Shakespeare gave me nightmares. And I had Shakespeare in 9th and 10th grade. And I was just like, ooh, please, I don't know. Can I get it? Can I get through? But the book was really interesting. And I actually even started to understand A Midsummer Night's Dream a little more, like the little pieces of quotes that you put in there. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Right. See, that's also what I was trying to do. I know Shakespeare's I've always enjoyed it literally since elementary school. When I used to watch Shakespeare, the Animated Tales on HBO. So
oh my goodness.
To me, it's always been accessible and understandable, but I know it's not that way for everybody. And the way people teach Shakespeare, particularly in English classes, they latch on to the driest parts, the absolute driest parts.
Because can I tell you that I did not know that Othello was Black until much later in my life? Like English professor never said anything about
That's
that.
the most important part. That's a failure because that's the most important part. That he's this Black man surrounded by white people who are all trying to bring him down. He even says it. He has a line that's happily though I am Black. Perchance I happen to be Black. That's wild.
Wow.
See, they did. That's why you went into it being oh, this is gonna be bad. Shakespeare's so boring and dry. Girl. When it's 80% sex jokes. So,
I was
right.
reading through, and I was like, wait a minute.
So,
I have to go and get some Shakespeare books and try to
right,
read
right.
this.
So that's one thing I wanted to make it. I wanted to kind of bring out the parts of Shakespeare that like people who love it, the parts that we love, and the parts that we know are like entertaining and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to show Shakespeare as not this like you when you think of him, you picture this like poet the way we think of poets,
Right.
like this extremely overly educated man using this
Very
flowery language all the
proper.
time, but he was
Mm-hmm.
not. He was a bar flat kind. He was just a chill dude. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted him to
Mm-hmm.
be like that in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of have the actors who surrounded him be the same way.
Right.
And I hope that when people read that self same metal, they feel a lot less intimidated by Shakespeare. And even if you don't pick up a play to read, if there's a play being performed near you, I hope
Mm-hmm.
people will go see the play.
Yeah, because
So
I'm really gonna I want to go back through Othello because, like I said, I'm like, how did you not teach that he was a black man? Like,
that's
how did we gloss over that whole
that's
thing?
real. That's I don't understand that because that's
And
the point of the play.
and my mental block. So I'm skimming anyway, and probably didn't even pick up on it myself. And was just like, "What? Can I
Sorry.
just get through this, please?
Yeah. I
Can
mean,
I
and
just?"
also like Othello is he has the best or he has the most flowery language in the
Mm-hmm.
play.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're teaching it in a very dry way and you're not explaining like the turns of phrases and stuff and the poetry of it, it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to especially glaze over when Othello is talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Iago gets all the exciting speeches, Othello gets all the beautiful speeches. So it's
Mm.
very easy to just be like, "Oof, man, I don't know what he's saying. Let's just
Wow.
get to the end when they all,
Right.
when everybody starts dying. Let's just get to that part."
Yeah, in English, I was like, can we just get to the end of this whole Shakespeare thing together? Like, can we move on to something else,
Right.
please?
Mm.
And then we moved on to Kill a Mockingbird, which I was like,
That's where they lost me. That's where they were losing
they
me.
lost me with that one too, because then, everybody's looking, the one black child in
Mm.
the class, and every time something happened, they all
Oh,
looking at
good.
me like, can we please?
Man.
Just,
Yes.
like,
No, I understand.
yeah, yeah. English in East Brunswick High School in 1986 was trash.
Listen,
That's all I'm going to say.
I'm gonna tell you, English in the Catholic High School of Baltimore in the early 2000s was not much better.
I was gonna
So,
say,
struggle city, struggle city.
yeah. So in the back of the book, you
Hmm.
talk about the presence of non-white citizens and queer people in England. Tell our readers about your research process for the book and why you chose to shed light on queer and black people, but also on the treatment of black people in Shakespearean London.
Yeah, so I really wanted to basically write my own identity back in time, and just um to very firmly say black people, people of color,
Mm-hmm.
and queer people did exist in Shakespeare's time. He would have
Mm-hmm.
met them. I had an argument with an ex over whether or not Shakespeare would have met any black people from like of West African descent. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he would never have done that because he was dead before slavery times. And I was like, that sounds like a lie. And it was. Um, Thankfully there are many many scholars, particularly black women scholars, who have done so much research into the existence of black people in this particular time period and kind of connecting blackness to Shakespeare. And this was a time when racialization was just being was like still being developed as a
Mm-hmm. As
division
a
tactic.
tool, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and just kind of like tracking back in art and seeing like there's a famous painting or tapestry, I can't remember which one, of a joust happening in King Henry VIII's court. and one of the trumpeters is very clearly a Black man.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there are other like examples of people who are noted as being Black in like the burial records or baptismal records, and things like that. So Dr. Kim F. Hall, she has a book called Things of Blackness. That was one of my, foundational texts. Ayanna Thompson, she is also a Shakespearean scholar. I think she wrote the new foreword to the Folger edition of Othello. So she's done a lot of work around Blackness and Blackness of the early modern English theater, stuff like that. And part of it was just, a lot of my research was just a survival tactic because I am a Shakespearean actor, and I have at so many turns been made to feel like I have no place performing Shakespeare, or if I am invited in, it is by the gracious generosity of the white people who are allowing me to step in and play like a small role or servant role or something like that. So I wanted to, for my own just for my own like sanity, I wanted to, I felt that they were lying to me, and I needed to prove that to myself. And with this book, I want to make it easier for other people to know when they're being fed blatant untruths about history. So, and they always treat queer people like we were invented in the 90s or something.
Right.
And it's like this new fad that people are into, and you see all these records of, there were two bachelors who lived together all their lives and never got married. They were best friends and roommates. And it's like, that sounds fake. So I wanted to do the same with queerness and be like, hey, just because they didn't use the same language to identify themselves that we do today doesn't mean that people like us didn't exist.
Right.
So.
Right. Absolutely. And it's just interesting because it was like, this is my interpretation of it anyway. It seemed like it was no big deal for someone to be queer. They people in those times, they had no problem with it in the book. Like, oh yeah, somebody queer. There was even, there was a gentleman that got eaten by the, I guess they were, and he was just like, and but before the man that took him to it, he was like, oh, if I had the inclination, I'd, get with him, but then these same people have this entrenched bias toward Black and brown people. I'm like, okay, so y'all.
No, it never makes sense. So there were anti-sodomy laws that existed then. They would not. The only record of them being enforced were when it was it involved a child. And so other than that, if it was like two consenting adults, have at it. And you can't, unless you are in the room with people when they're actually having sex, you can't really prove that two people of the same sex had, the only way you can prove that people actually had sex with any surety is if somebody gets pregnant. That's the only like proof you have.
Right.
So it was just like, you know what, people doing what they're doing. And at the time, King James the First was raging bisexual. He just was doing whatever he felt like with whoever he felt like, whenever he felt like. So it's just like, well, if the king is doing it, we can't make too big of a deal out of it. But yeah,
I just thought that was very interesting that people like, you're Black, I get, like the treatment that they gave them, and then the queer people, they were just like, okay, it's cool, and I'm just like, okay, but why can't we get the same response? Why do we have to be like?
It never makes sense. It never makes sense. Racism is illogical.
Girl, so, that's a whole nother show.
And it always has been. It is illogical, and it always has been. And like you can see it when you read like Othello, when you read The Merchant of Venice, when you read Titus Andronicus, you can see in the way that the black characters are talked about and the black characters talk about themselves. You can see the like foundations of that. There was it's mentioned in passing in the book, but the playwright Ben Jonson, who was one of Shakespeare's contemporaries, he wrote this like grand, they were called masks, but this grand piece to be performed at the palace, where the ladies all played the daughters of Neptune, who were black. They did it in blackface. It was called the Mask of Blackness, and their goal was to find a way to like clean the blackness off of their skin so that they could be beautiful. So it's like you got stuff like that, you dealing with stuff like that.
See, you're making me want to go back and like totally restudy Shakespeare now and be up in your DMs like, Brittany.
Look, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm always ready to talk about Shakespeare. I'm always ready to deep dive.
Okay, now don't say nothing when I'm up in your DMs like every 5 minutes. Like, wait a minute, what does this mean? I'm just saying.
Listen, you don't threaten me with a good time, okay? Because
I'm just saying, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready. I'm ready to
listen. I did that in high school too. We read The Winter's Tale, and my classmates were like, "I don't understand what they're saying. I don't understand what's going on." I was like, "Don't worry, I got you." And I explained everything in plain English. And then they were like, "Oh, you got to do this in front of the whole class." And I did it, and my teacher, she was a hater. She was a hater because I was right.
Yeah.
But the way I said it, my little Baltimore, East Baltimore girl South, the way I said it, she wasn't feeling it. But they understood.
Of course, because you probably taught circles around her.
Yep.
She ain't gonna be happy about that.
No, hater.
We, just let them haters hate. We ain't
stunting
them. We ain't stunting. Now, there were several scenes involving hairstyles and people touching Joan's hair without permission and making commentary talking about, oh, well, it's soft. And, she's like, well, it's not fur. So why did you choose to include this dynamic, this hair thing in the book?
That is for my black girls, because, as much as I'm writing in a historical period, 400 years ago, whatever, I'm still writing a book for a contemporary audience. And I know I have felt this. I've had these moments. Every black person has had these moments where somebody just rolls up and puts their hands in your hair and they're like, oh my God, it's so soft. So I just, that's just a commiseration moment. And I have the person who does it. Or the first person who does it. It's someone who she likes and respects. But he just doesn't have those boundaries. But then on the other hand, one of her love interests, Nick, when he does it, he asks first. Right. Because he has some couth. Like he has couth. So he asks before he puts his hands in his hair, and he doesn't pull the like, oh, it's so soft. Like I was surprised. Like I thought it was gonna be like, I don't know, steel wool or whatever.
And then when she was visiting the queen.
Yeah, that I just was like, you know what? This is going to be the most stressful. I was like, I'm going to stress myself out. I'm going to stress every other black girl reading this book out. We just all going to be stressed together.
Hell out. I was like, oh, are they really just up in her head? And then the queen talking about, oh, well, this is not appropriate this time. Like, bitch, so it was appropriate for anybody else because what are you talking about?
Listen.
It's
for that moment, I just wanted to show that, like, even outside of all of the conflict that Joan can face head on, like all of the fighting she can do, there are moments when she just has to, like, all it's about is just getting through this. How many of us have been in situations where, God, we wish we could just throw hands and beat the shit out of somebody. But you just have to sit there and just making it through. That's it. So
I was so vocal during that scene. I was just like, what are y'all? Excuse me. Stop. Can we get the hands out the hair, please?
But when you think about people who have this absolute power, and these are the women who are named in the book are the women who would have performed in the Mask of Blackness. What would they do if they had access to an actual black woman who had less social power than they did? They would just go have fun.
This is why the Lord put me in this time period. Because if I was in any of those, I'd have been gone. I'd have been dead. Because I know we all say if we were in that time, I'd have done. But you know what? I'm telling you.
No, listen, but people did do. Like, not for nothing, people did do in those times.
Right.
We probably won't hear about it because they can't have, the rebellion and stuff being front and center. But people definitely, we hear, there are stories about, enslaved people poisoning the people who were, torturing them.
Slow poisoning them, girl.
Right. Slow poisoning, fast poisoning, straight up murdering people. It's... So, Joan had to ride this one out because she had some other stuff to do, but when she could fight, she fought.
I guess. Woo.
I know. It's stressful. It's stressful. It's interesting because it might be the most stressful moment in the book.
I was almost in your DMs on that one, like, what are you doing?
It's good parts too. It's
the whole book is good parts and stressful parts, but that part I was just like, Brittany.
Yeah. Listen. It's real though.
And then I had to throw some shade. I said, see, now this is Howard girl over here writing this nonsense.
No, but you know what? I think when I was working on that particular scene, I had I was teaching at a school down here in Louisiana, and we were doing the parent orientation. So the parents were coming, and before they got there, I was helping somebody put some stuff on the bulletin board. And one of the administrators came over and just hand full in my hair and was like, "Oh my God, it's so soft. You remind me of my goddaughter." And I was like, "Ma'am, I don't know you." And I had, so that came from a very real place.
See,
from a very, very real place.
So I would bet, obviously, her goddaughter is black, and that just felt like that gave her license to just come up and just
hand full in my fro. I was like, "Miss,
Brittany, how did you handle that? What did you?
I wish I would say that I smacked her hand or something, or I was like, if you don't get your fucking I wish I responded like that, but no, I froze because I was in absolute shock, and it's one of those moments where you look around, you're like, is this really happening to me? And then I did tell my supervisor, and they were like, "Oh, well, you know how she is."
Nope. See,
and so I don't work there anymore, so there you have that.
Right.
But
yeah, no.
So yeah, it was a very recent, very real scene, man.
I'm just saying, if y'all want a trigger warning for this book, that's a trigger warning for this book. You gonna see some hair touching scenes, and that's the most bothersome one. Okay? I'm just saying. So, The King's Men, William Shakespeare's acting company, it plays a pivotal role in this story. How did you decide on weaving Joan's expertise with swords and her gift with metal into this theatrical world?
Yeah, so I'm a theater person myself. And that seemed like the most logical and easiest entry point into this world and the story. And I know that women weren't allowed on stage at this point in history, but
that blew my mind. Is that an actual thing that they were not allowed? Wow.
The only women who were allowed to perform were the ladies of the court. They could perform in the masks that happened at the palace and stuff, but women weren't allowed on stage. And it was to the point where acting troops from other European countries would come to
Mm-hmm.
England, and they would have women performing, and the women would get booed, they would get heckled, all kinds of stuff. So no,
Wow.
women were not allowed on stage at the time, but
Wow.
women
Wow.
were active participants in theater from like the backstage angle. So
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
would collect money at the front. They would, take care of the costumes. They would help
Mm-hmm.
the actors get dressed. They would manage the books. Some women were like they owned stake in the theaters, so stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
it made sense to have Joan be within the orbit of the theater without actually being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And there, because she has a twin brother who's an actor,
Mm-hmm.
um, there had to be a moment where they switched places. So
Right.
I had to.
I
There,
was cracking up. My girl was just nervous. I was like,
listen.
this is blowing my mind. I'm like, this is a whole like scandal for her to
Mm-hmm.
be up on this stage.
Yep, she was.
I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And then I'm just like, she's the one that's teaching them how to fight with the swords and do the fight scenes and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
but she can't be on stage.
Yep. Yeah, they weren't allowed on, they weren't, no. So, but that's why,
Mm,
you would have the younger, the apprentices in the company would play all the female roles. So that's why
mhm,
her brother plays, Hermia in A Midsummer
mhm,
Night's Dream. He plays Desdemona in Othello.
mhm,
Um, he plays Juliet in Romeo and Juliet.
mhm,
So, all of the boys who are around Joan's age would be
mhm,
playing the female parts.
mhm.
So
Okay.
yeah. Even Joan's love interest, Nick, I have him play a couple female roles in some of the plays.
Mhm.
So
Okay. So now, Ogun is the head Orisha, and
hmm
he is an important deity in Yoruba mythology. I want to talk about your decision to integrate Orisha based magic in Joan's journey and how it ties together with the Fae because we have that pact that
hmm
happens in the book. So, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so, like I said, the Orisha were kind of foundational to the whole concept of this story.
Mm
Um, and so was Joan being a child of Ogun, being blessed by Ogun.
hmm. Mm hmm.
The rest of her family, they're all blessed by other Orisha. So
Right.
her mother was blessed by Legba.
Mm hmm.
Her brother's blessed by Oya, who
Mm hmm.
is, the Orisha of the wind and also the
Wind.
mask. So
Mm
it
hmm.
makes sense that she's blessed someone who's a gifted actor because acting is like wearing a mask.
Right.
Her father is a Yemaya.
Mm
There are a couple other Orisha folk reveals within the book that y'all will
hmm.
get to at
Mm
the end. But it just I was kind of leaning into this idea that you know, black people have existed in England since the Roman times.
hmm. Mm
Um,
hmm.
and so there's this community of people who brought their traditions from West Africa with them by
Mm hmm.
way of the Romans, and
Mm hmm.
they've just been able to keep this going over the past like 1500 plus years.
Mm hmm.
Um, and it goes back to that question of what would happen if someone who could control iron had to fight against the Fae who are specifically vulnerable to iron. Um,
Mm hmm.
so and
So how
she's
did
like,
you come up with that with this ability for Joan to be,
yeah,
a worker of metal? Because Bia was around her wrist and Bia was
yeah,
humming
yeah.
and it.
Well, it's it makes sense because Ogun is the Orisha of technology. Like he is the
Okay.
forge. He is
Mm-hmm.
and when you say technology, it doesn't specifically mean like computers and
Computers. Mm-hmm.
technology in the way we think of it today. It means
Mm-hmm.
everything from like weapons to farm tools to,
Mm-hmm.
anything we use to manipulate our environments,
Mm-hmm.
anything we create to kind of help us interact with the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense for her to have these kind of blacksmith like abilities
Mm-hmm.
that link her to Ogun. And then it helps that her father is a goldsmith, so he would be
Right.
working with like jewelry and making things with fine metals. So she's also grown up in this house where this is the practice. So she's had the ability to really hone her magic in a way that like everyone else not like can't necessarily. Like her mother can create doorways between places. You're not going to be using that power all
Yeah.
like you're not just going to,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And her dad as a Yemaya, we don't really get into this in the book, but Yemaya is the Orisha of the ocean. They're not close to
Mm-hmm.
the ocean, so he can't really do a whole lot of like water manipulation because
Mm-hmm.
they're just close to a river, which is fresh
Right.
water, and that's Oshun's kind of purview, the rivers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like
But he
Joan
did
and
use it a little bit to help
yeah,
with James when he got hurt.
yeah. So that was
Mm-hmm.
I think with that one, Yemaya is also the Orisha of motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to think about a power that connects to that. And you know how, and I thought of how there's this idea that like mothers always know like what to do to
Mm-hmm.
heal you or to take care
Right.
of you. So
Mm-hmm.
he also has this ability to make these creams and salves and stuff that help wounds heal faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You must have really studied the mess
I,
out of. Oh, because she's throwing the names out here, y'all. Like, I mean,
yeah,
I've read
well,
about the Orisha, but hell if I can remember them all. She's just like
right. No.
Yamayan and Legwa and Ogun, and I'm like, okay, good.
Well, like I say at the end of the book,
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming at all of this Orisha stuff from a very real place. I
Mm-hmm.
am, I'm married to a Santero priest who's been a
Mm-hmm.
priest for 12 years already.
Mm-hmm.
Um I myself am not initiated, but I am in like the early stages of developing my relationship with the Orisha and understanding them. Like I have my own Ogun, my own Alegba, um,
Wow,
and all of that stuff. So,
that's
when
wonderful.
it's coming from a personal relationship. I'm not coming at it as an expert,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want anybody to think they can read this book and it'll be like, it'll tell them how to get into
Mm-mm.
Orisha worship
No,
or ancestor veneration or anything like that.
right.
There are some like resources I give in the book for you to
Yes.
get into
Mm-hmm.
that, but
There are a couple books.
yeah,
Yes.
it
Mm-hmm.
is I come at it now from a personal connection. So
Right.
that's also why I'm just rattling it off because
I'm just like,
yeah.
okay, I'm impressed, Brittany. Get your bad self. Like I said, I've studied it because I love it, and
Hmm.
honestly, because I'm just like, I need to be calling on
Hmm.
these Orisha because these white folks out here be tripping, and I
Listen,
need to call. Like I'm telling you, they were present in the Alabama brawl. I'm telling you, they were there.
listen,
They were
and
there.
the ancestors were definitely.
They were there. There was just too many things going on. That was the exact place where they sold off enslaved people,
Mm.
and you got this whole like little battle going on between black people and white people. And I ain't never seen no black person throw their head up in the air when they get ready to go into a fight. I'm like, all of that, my man jumps out the boat, swims across the water, and hops up
Hmm.
out that. If you watch, he hops up out that water like it's nothing.
Hmm.
I'm tell they were there. They were there. Yeah. That's a whole nother thing. That's
Right.
off to- so the story offers this really immersive experience of sights and sounds. I could hear the metal of the swords clanging against each other. I could see the ornateness of their dress, not just the costumes in the plays, but just their dress and the just I could almost feel like I was there. How did you approach all of these sensory details and ensure that they enhanced the narrative without overwhelming it?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting because those sensory details came in revision, not in the initial draft. I am a
Really?
person who struggles with description.
Okay.
And I think that's because I am an actor first, and then from my acting is the foundation, and the writing kind of springs from that. So
Mhm. Mhm.
dialogue, I got you. Character interactions, we good. Plot
Uh-huh.
stuff, yes. The one thing an actor never has to think about is the set. I don't have to think about the set.
Right.
I barely have to think about my costume. Y'all just gonna
Mhm.
put me in something and I'm gonna
Right.
stand somewhere and the world will form around me.
Right. Right. Right.
So when I am, writing my initial drafts, my brain doesn't automatically add those details in.
Okay.
Which is fine. That's what revision is for. So when I went back, I was able to kind of find the spaces where those descriptions best fit instead of having too much and having to cut back.
Okay.
So I found that a little bit easier. And again, I did so much research. Just, I have this one book that's, touring Shakespeare's London on 5 groats a day, and it just has wow. like what they ate, what everything looked like. I lived in London for almost 3 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I actually like all of the streets aren't the same. Some of them are, but I walk the streets and stuff. I've been in the theater that is a replica of the original Globe.
Okay.
Wow. And kind of so that was informed by experience. They rebuilt the theater in basically the way it would have been built in the late 1500s.
Okay.
And and they perform plays in that same like original way. It's really fun. It's some of the best Shakespeare I've ever seen.
Wow.
And it's exciting, and you stand around the stage, and it's during the day, so the sun is out, it's an open air theater, the actors see you see them, they talk directly to you, it's all like, it's really fun. So all of that,
and I can see that in the scene where the play is going on, and then they're out in the audience, and Joan is dancing with people, and like the whole audience is just kind of really immersed in the play, and they're up and having a good time. I can totally see that influence there.
Yeah, so some of it is, influenced by actual experiences, some of it is through research. And it all came in revision. There was, most of it came in the revision process. So
how many edits did you do of the book?
So for this one, because it's the first novel I've ever finished, so this one had needed more work than anything else.
Okay.
So I did maybe six edits.
Wow.
I did one revision before I got my agent, and then we worked on it together for about a year before we went on submission. Okay. And then I got one round of big notes from my editor and a round of small notes from my editor, and then book 2.
Look at you though, because you have 3 different covers for the book. I saw the video.
Listen, they're so pretty. I'm so grateful.
Pretty. Are they in reach? Are they within reach?
Yeah. One is. Wait. Okay, I get it. Yes, they are. Hold on. Let me get these bad boys.
Because they're so pretty.
They're gorgeous. So this was a special edition for this like subscription box called Fox and Wit. So you can actually buy these on the Fox and Wit website.
Wow.
So yeah, this one. And then this one isn't out yet. This is for the UK paperback edition. So, yeah. So they're like, Joan is getting it. Joan.
Yeah.
This one has like the Globe Theater in the background, the flying pages, like, yeah. And then this one, she has this gorgeous yellow dress on, like, and we haven't even talked about the cover of book 2. Nobody's seen it yet. So,
oh man,
it's better. It's even better. It's better.
Wow.
Fernanda took it to the next level. It's just wait.
Excited. I'm so excited. And speaking of Joan, she deserves all those covers because she's wielding her own unique skills in this male-dominated society. I hate the fact that she, was. I was with James when he was like, you can't marry Henry. Henry had no skill. Joan could go in there and...
No skill, no swag, nothing.
Nothing. And Joan could just sit in there and just... that shop belonged to her. I don't care what anybody says. That shop belonged to her. But speak to the challenges of crafting such a strong, young Black female protagonist in a Shakespearean setting.
Yeah. So one thing, I didn't want to fall into like the cliches of having a very opinionated, um, and I don't want to say strong female protagonist, but just like a
Mm-hmm.
very active
Right.
a very active protagonist
Mm-hmm.
in this. I didn't want to do like the, you know, how you always get the scene where they lace the girl into the corset and she's like, oh, this feels like a prison. And it's like, girl, that's
Mm-hmm.
just a bra. Like,
Right.
just wearing a bra.
Get
Um,
over it.
so, you know, I wanted to, but I also wanted to be realistic about the the issues she would run into being a
Mm-hmm.
woman in this
Mm-hmm.
time period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just kind of finding the points where she would wish she could buck the system,
Mm-hmm.
points where she actually does, and then like, you know, show that she's choosing her battles. It
Mm-hmm.
helped that she's 16 because it's an age where she would have a bit more freedom. She
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be expected to get married yet.
Right. Right.
And you know, she wants to be a goldsmith,
Mm-hmm.
and until she gets married, she can help out her father in his shop.
Right.
Um, she can't own the shop, but she can help him out.
Right.
So, and you know, she and her brother would be done with their schooling. He's in his
Mm-hmm.
apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
She's not really expected to do a whole lot, so they let her go and, you know,
Right.
hang out
Right.
with them and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, she's just at a point where she does have a certain amount of freedom and more than we're used to seeing women have in this time period, mostly because she got, you know, her family got money, they're merchants, they have money. So
Mm-hmm.
she's, you know, she doesn't have to work, she doesn't have to do a whole lot, but she's also, she can see the end of that freedom on the horizon, and so
Mm-hmm.
she's struggling with um having that kind of in her view and also trying to enjoy what she has while she has it, and like
Mm-hmm.
plan on how to, within the confines of her society, get the life that she wants
Mm-hmm.
if so possible. So, you
Okay.
know, Henry ain't got no swag, but
None.
if she was his wife, she could still be doing goldsmith stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So I know, I know. And
Henry
also,
just
like, she got her options are so good, and he's so like just
not.
regular. Like,
Right.
is it that important? Can't you do something
Right.
else?
Right. Like the whole scene where she was in on the stage in the play and she it was like it was her life. So she, I could feel the realness of it and I just imagined that the audience was just enraptured because
Mhm.
it was so authentic for her. It was what she was feeling, that authenticity just went out into the crowd and people were just like, and then when they kissed and the whole crowd went wild. I'm like, yep,
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, you know, Nick is smooth a little bit. Nick got a little smooth.
Listen, Nick got some game. I,
Yeah. Rose has more game, but Nick has some game.
can we talk about it? I mean, I'm just, Rose. I was like, okay,
Right?
Rose, got me.
She got, but you know, it's like the funny thing is like all three of them have their own sweat. Like Joan
Hmm.
isn't a slouch either. Joan got some moves, so
Joan just got some fashion issues though.
she does. She does. She's just practical, but you know, she's extremely practical. She's like, what am I going? I just need to put on something that fits and I can move in.
I need her to step it up a little bit in the second book. Okay, I need her to get some fashion sense. I need her to get it
Listen,
together. Her own
we got
brother got more fashion sense. He's like throwing stuff at her. He was like, the blue one's right there.
right.
Why are you going for the tan one? What are you doing?
Yeah. She
Yeah.
looks, you can't be good at everything. She can't be good at everything.
I guess. I guess. If that's her one downfall, I could live with that.
Right?
I could live with that. I could live with that.
She's stubborn and she can't dress. So,
In the scheme of things, I mean, though, we good because my girl could just open up her hand and a little metal disc just pops
yeah.
out. I'm okay.
Yep. So, and
I'm good
like
with that.
honestly, she hasn't had a reason to learn how to pick out clothes that flatter her because her brother
Right.
does it for her every day. He puts
Right.
them in matching outfits. Like, why would
Right.
I wouldn't I'd be like, I'm gonna focus on other stuff. You got me. You got me.
You dress
You
me.
got me. You got me.
Like Sinbad said in his stand up, we gonna get dressed, waiting for his wife to dress him. So I
So,
want to talk about that book title, that
mhm.
self same metal. It has a poetic depth to it. Talk about how you came up. Did you come up with it? Did the publisher come up with it? And how it encapsulates the essence of your story.
It is a portion of a Shakespeare quote from King Lear.
Y'all
It's
see that? See how brilliant she is? She really making me want to go study some Shakespeare.
right. So in the opening scene of King Lear, the titular king has his each of he says each of his three daughters have to tell him how much they love him, and whoever loves him the most will get the largest share of the country since he's dividing it between the three of them.
Okay.
So his first daughter, she speaks and she gives this like wonderful, like, oh, I love you more than this and this and this. And his second daughter starts her speech out with, I am made of that self same metal as my sister. And then she goes and tries to like one up her. So that
Mm-hmm.
like portion of the quote just stuck in my head. And as I was writing this book, and it was like my working title, and I couldn't let it go. And
Mm-hmm.
at one point, I was asked to change it, and I was like, I
Double
need it.
down.
It just
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
works. It's so great.
It does. It
So
really does.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the second book, the title is also a portion of a Shakespeare quote. I want to say from Romeo and Juliet. It's called Saint
Okay.
Seducing Gold.
Mm.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Uh,
without giving away any spoilers, can readers expect more of this real life, the merging of real life historical figures and events in the rest of your saga?
Yes, so there's gonna be more real people in book two. We are actually gonna spend more time at the court of King James the First,
Mm.
and get a little more of his chaotic bisexualness.
Okay.
Um, but that's also, it poses a big problem for Joan because King James was also a notorious witch hunter. He
Mm.
was so obsessed with witches that he wrote books on how to identify them. He wrote a book called Demonology and all this other stuff. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this was the guy who allegedly would bring the like handsome young men that he took under his wing. He would bring them to court meetings and like nibble on their necks in the middle of meetings. But also, this is King James of the King James Bible. So you got like layers and levels here, right? Um,
Okay.
and right. I will say book two picks up immediately after book one.
Okay.
So yeah, so that cliffhanger, we gonna talk about it. It's gonna get, talked about. Um
Yeah.
and
Because that kind of got me kind of hot with that. I was like,
I mean, I'm
swiping,
writing a trilogy. I gotta bring y'all back. I gotta bring y'all back.
swiping, and then you going into all the explanations of the people. I'm like, no, 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 Brittany. I give me
But
a little bit more of the story,
but
please.
the main conflict of book one was resolved. So
Yes,
so that's it.
but
So, and I just had to set up book two. I had to bring y'all back for book two. So it's picking up right where book one left off. There you go.
all right.
Yeah,
I'll be patient.
we're gonna see a little bit more of Baba Ben, who got in chapter one.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna see a little bit more with him.
Okay.
Joan is also, Robert Cecil isn't done with being a jerk.
Lord,
Um,
Jesus.
and
Got
we
to
got some more
deal with
jerks
him some
appearing.
more. Oh
Yeah.
God. Okay.
And then there are gonna be some new historical figures popping up in book two, and we just gonna it's some more romance happening as well. We're gonna
All right.
yeah
All right. So
And more
so
plays. They're gonna do
when do
more
you
plays.
do like a cover reveal, a title reveal? When is that gonna happen?
So soon. Cover reveals coming very soon.
Okay. Like
Very,
very
very soon.
soon, a few days, very soon, a few weeks.
Very soon, 7 days.
All right. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So,
I'm
so
ready.
keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled. It's
All
it's
right.
it's a gorgeous cover. So, and
Okay.
then after that, we're gonna start. Then we're gonna start dropping some more, tidbits of
Mhm.
book two. And
Okay.
Joe goes through it in book two too.
Oh gosh. Okay.
She got better, but everybody else got better too. So,
Oh boy. All right. All right. So
so
Joan
it's
got to
a
level up now.
yeah, and it's
Okay.
all in the lead up to book three. So I'm writing book three now.
Oh
So.
wow. Okay. So
Mhm.
book 2 is done. You're
Yeah.
working on book 3.
Book two is in the can. Book two is coming out next April.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
I'm working on book three now, and it's yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. So where can readers find your books?
They can find that self-same metal basically anywhere you buy books. Um, if you want to go online, it's on bookshop.org.
Okay.
It's on Amazon, it's on Barnes and Noble, Target.com, Walmart.com, like so
Okay.
if you go to your local indies, your local independent bookstore, if they don't have it on the shelves, you can always ask them and they can order you a copy.
Okay.
Um, I want to say if you order from Octavia Books here in New Orleans or Blue
Okay.
Cypress Books in New Orleans, and you put
Mhm.
a note in your order that you want it personalized, then I
Mhm.
can go ahead and pop into the store and personalize it before they send it to you.
Okay. You
But
just
yeah,
all over the place. Baltimore,
yeah,
London,
yeah. I'm a
Louisiana.
boop, 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 boop. But yeah, so and it's available in hardcover, in ebook, and in audiobook.
Okay.
Um, the UK paperback is coming out in January. There will
Okay.
also be a US paperback. I'm not sure about the release date for that.
Okay.
And also, it's in libraries. It's in about 500 plus libraries, either the physical copy, the audiobook, or the ebook. So, and if your library doesn't have it, request it, and they will snatch up a copy.
All right.
The
Okay.
audiobook is great too.
Okay.
Patricia Allison, who played Olu on Sex Education on Netflix, she does the
Okay.
audiobook and she does an excellent job. So,
Wow.
mhm.
Okay. So my good friend DL, you hear that? She's an audiobook queen. You can get it
Yeah.
in audio, DL. And where can we find you on social media and the internet?
Yeah, so you can find me basically everywhere. I am Brittany X, BrittanyActs,
Mhm.
on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I'm gonna still call it Twitter, on Twitter,
Twitter.
and sometimes, very rarely, on Facebook.
Okay.
My website is brittanyandwilliams.com. And then my newsletter is on Substack, and that is Brittany Acts, BrittanyActs.substack.com. But you can get linked to that from either my Instagram, or my Twitter, or my website. So,
And it'll be if you put it in the bio thing, I'll just put it so that when you go to the episode page, it'll all be down there so they can grab all your socials there.
oh, thank you.
Yes, 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 absolutely. Well, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you for sharing your time, your talents, for giving me some renewed inspiration about Shakespeare.
Listen, and if you want some, like, there are some good live performances that you can see videos of.
Okay.
If you want, like, Gwendolyn Christie played Titania in this version done by the National Theater. That's
Okay.
really hilarious of A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's
Okay.
good to watch, easy to understand. So I'll like
Send me
DM me. I
that.
got you. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
you. I got you. I got the good
Yeah,
stuff. I
you
got the
got my
good.
email. You got my
Yes.
email. Send me some links. I've got a renewed interest in
Listen.
Shakespeare. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing this with me. Thank you for your ideas, for your brilliance, for your talent. Love it.
Yeah. Thank you for reading and thank you for having me on. This was great. I had so much fun.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I had so much fun writing your questions. I didn't even come up with a quote for the end of the show, y'all. Y'all know I usually do a quote at the end of the show, but guess what? I think on my feet, and she's a Shakespeare woman. So how about you take us out with a little bit of Shakespeare?
Okay. Oh,
You saw that look. She's like, oh, okay.
right. Wait, does it have to be, can it be something that wasn't in the book?
Could be whatever you want.
Anything? Okay. All right. Rumor is a pipe blown by jealousy, surmises, and conjectures, and of so easy and so plain a stop, the blunt monster with uncounted heads, the still discordant, wavering multitude can play upon it.
And that means what? Translation, please.
Yeah, anybody
First
can.
off, that she just did y'all see that flow?
It means that rumors are spread by anyone. And the blunt monster with uncounted heads, the still discordant, wavering multitude, would be directly talking to the audience at the Globe. So like, because they are like the
Wow.
audience is the blunt monster with uncounted heads. So this like huge number of people, the still discordant, wavering multitude, they're out there talking and chatting and doing whatever because they haven't shut up yet. Because this is at the very beginning of the play.
Wow.
Can play like even y'all can spread rumors. So
Wow.
boom.
So there you have it, y'all. That's your quote for the end of the show.
I told you I could break down Shakespeare with the best of them.
Listen, the way she just came, I'm impressed as hell. She just came out, y'all. Just was like, okay, let me just think for a second, and got it. No notes, no having to look on the screen. She just got it. I will give the Howard woman her props.
Oh,
Y'all,
thank you.
listen, and y'all know I'm a Hampton girl, so you know I don't do this that often, okay? You know I don't. So I'm giving the Howard woman her props. She was able off the cuff to come up with the. How much Shakespeare do you know by heart?
A lot, because I've been in quite a few Shakespeare plays, so it's all like rattling
Wow.
around in my brain. So I
Wow.
know a lot.
Okay, give me one more.
One more? Okay. Oh man. Um, oh God. See, you put me on the spot. So now I'm like out of my
Give me
mind.
something romantic. Do you have anything romantic rattling around from Shakespeare?
Yeah. Cesario, I love thee so that maga all my pride, nor wit nor reason can my passion hide. Yeah, that's it. Cesario, yeah.
Wow. See that?
So that's yeah, so it's like maga all my pride, like forget my pride. I'm just here. I'm just making a fool of myself for you because I love you so much.
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the episode of A Different World where Lena finally figured out what Shakespeare meant and translated it in class in like black people talk for
Listen, I tell you this. I never enjoy Shakespeare more than when I see black people do it. So
yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I mean, if I say black people do it, I probably would have a totally different view of it as well. So, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. You're welcome back anytime. I'm ready to talk about the rest of these books. And so y'all have gotten your quotes and y'all know what to do. Grab a book and read. And I'm out. Thank you for lending me your ear today. If you've enjoyed this independent podcast, you can help me continue to shine the light on Black authors and their stories by becoming a patron at patreon.com/betweenthereads or by giving a one-time gift at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next time for another great episode.